So, very good afternoon, everyone. My name is Udit Sakhuja. Once again, I would like to welcome all of you for our dialogue series initiated by DocMode called GAPSULE. GAPSULE is first of an industry dialogue series aimed at bridging the knowledge gap between the healthcare industry and medical practitioners for better patient outcomes. In the recent discussions, we talked about the pharma industry, how healthcare has been have different kind of knowledge gap. Also, we understood the fact points in nutritional segment. But today's session is something very, very different and interesting. Yes, today's topic is medical devices. We know medical devices is a very important part of uh, overall health industry. It's you can see how it is related to the patient, starting from diagnostic perspective and to the stages where patients in trauma stage or something in life changing age stage. So medical devices industry is very important and integral part. But in recent years, we have seen a lot of challenges. Adaptations have been done, innovations has been done. And to discuss all these perspectives, today we have our two very eminent panelists with us. We have Dr. Rajiv Chhibber, who is Vice President External Affairs. Welcome, Dr. Rajiv Chhibber. And he's a Senior Corporate Affair, Policy, Communication, and Media Strategist. A very interesting profile. And he's a member of various government committees, subcommittees in the areas of public health advocacy, pharma, medical devices, tobacco control, NCDs, etc. His qualifications started from has his PhD, master degree in journalism, mass communications, and he has done his bachelor degree in English literature from Delhi University. He is a founding member of Public Relations Society of India, a national body of communication and PR experts, and was awarded an honorary doctorate from Aztec University, Mexico in 2019, in the field of global public health communication policy. Great to have Dr. Rajiv Chhibber today on board. Uh,
Good afternoon. Good afternoon.
Thank you so much. Another very eminent panelist today with us is Mr. Umesh Uday Shankar. He's welcome, Mr. Umesh. He's head
Hi.
sales and marketing in surgical and consumable in Olympus Medical System India Private Limited. Mr. Umesh's career has started from medical sales representative at American Remedies. In 2010, Mr. Shankar took an unconventional decision to take up the endoscope and laparoscopy portfolio in healthcare and then transitioned to Olympus Medical System in 2017. His achievement in last 12 years has worked on pan-Indian both endoscopy and laparoscopy domains, managing a team of 75 colleagues in both sales and marketing. Once again, welcome Mr. Umesh for today's discussion. And let's start the very interesting point of view. As a normal human being, we all know some or other way we are very much attached to some type of medical devices, either us or our family members, because what we believe this particular industry provide safety point of view in terms of we ensure that whatever the transitions happen in the body somewhere down the line is have been attached with kind of medical devices. My family, my father have been implanted with the you know total knee replacement surgery. So he has something called medical device, assuring that medical device industry has good quality of equipments. All the world has been changing. So that's mean a lot of research, rigorous innovation, which have been done since so many years, have given a lot of better patient outcomes. With that, I would like to ask our first question to Dr. Rajiv Chhibber. We all know in COVID-19, every single industry have been affected. But we'd like to know what have been the key lessons learned from the pandemic.
Yeah, thanks, Udit. It's a very pertinent question, and I think you laid the basis of the question itself when you said that the first stage of diagnosis for everyone is a medical device, and that's as low as a thermometer when you get to know that you have a small thing as a fever, and that fever, when further diagnosed, when further looked into a lens, and then deciphered, you'll get to know that it's a flu or god forbid it's a covid-19 kind of a symptom, and then you move forward. But yeah, covid-19 it taught us an immense lesson within the country, It had the country completely standstill, and at that time we were thinking, how is the manufacturing going to happen, how is the entire supply chains going to happen, and what will happen if people do not reach or get diagnosed properly. So in fact, the COVID pandemic is something which really made the country also understand that those 2 years we lived up to the mark of being import redundant. So medical device sector, as you know, is almost 70 to 75% or 80% on import dependent as of now, and we've got larger imaging to even smaller devices that are coming from overseas and not being manufactured here in India. But here was the change. I also am the joint coordinator of IMED, which is Association of Medical Devices for India, and at that point of time, the Department of Pharmaceutical, Ministry of Health, and the Prime Minister's office gave an opportunity to IMED to work with them hand in glove. With others also, CI and FICCI were a part of it, but largely because from a manufacturer's point of view, IMED was directly looking at 1,200 plus manufacturers in the country. We looked at the fact that what are the basic amenities that are required immediately to be covered when the pandemic struck us, the ones which need to be spruced up at a double engine level, not the the quote unquote double engine that we talk about, but the double engine level that needed to be spruced up. Things like PP kits, gloves were very the basic ones, which masks, etc., were the basic ones that we looked off. We worked with the Ministry of Textiles, the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and the Department of Pharmaceuticals came out with the kind of specifications that were required. But over and beyond, we looked at the fact that even the basic kits, which were your diagnostic kits, like the COVID-19 kits and the other kits that were not available, need to also be manufactured. And there was the challenge because the raw material was one issue that was not coming from overseas. We had completely the boundaries sealed off, and then the number of manufacturers who could actually make it, that cost was a one time cost. But then we had an overwhelming 153 companies coming from the own domestic industry itself, prepared to do manufacturing at a local level, sourcing resources at a local level, and utilizing your APIs so that that could be kind of offset it for the next couple of months till the time the sourcing happens from a larger overseas background. So that was the daunting challenge, I think, to answer your question.
Absolutely, I fully echoed this point because India was endorsed that in this COVID pandemic, how we have actually made sure that in such a strong hard situation, we were able to manufacture all the basic amenities required for the COVID in terms of medical
Bingo.
devices. Heads off on that particular point. What's your view, Mr. Umesh, on it? How you see it from your perspective?
Thanks, Udit. I would like to know a little expand from what Dr. Rajiv has already shared about this insight. What we saw is that the overwhelming responsiveness, both from government as well as from the industry point of view. First time we saw that there is a non-silo based coordination from all quarters. Even government also has changed the way in which they used to procure things. All the entire machinery got changed from a tender based stuff. Then they went to a immediate quotation based purchases. So all those things got fast tracked. But unfortunately, I think after COVID, we didn't lived that story, and we came back to pre-COVID situation. But that was a very overwhelming responsiveness we saw from both public and private machineries to respond to that situation. Yeah.
Yeah, I think very well said, Mr. Umesh. In addition to what Dr. Rajiv mentioned about it, some or other way, they have given a lot of principal changes, which is very much required and which should be sustainable. That's very important.
Yeah.
Uh, Another question which I'd like to ask Dr. Rajiv Chhibber, you mentioned India dependability on medical devices very much from the import perspective. It comes from outside in. So in that case, how would you see the dearth of talent, expertise, or a knowledge gap, which is very much required if we consider that India can become a hub of medical device industry?
No, that was pretty evident. That was pretty evident when you see from day one itself. We had these technologies which were with us and just if you could actually vision it, India's medtech sector really started to mature in 2016, 17, 18, and by the time 2019, the industry really got into a mode where they were reaching out to the US, to Singapore, to Netherlands, to Ireland, to the UK, and other countries for a transfer of technology. Um, Suddenly, COVID struck. We were in that kind of a situation where we had stuff, but we could not operate those stuff. And one glaring example was the entire oxygen concentrators, which over 300 of them lying just packed at the Indira Gandhi airport and not being utilized or sent to hospitals because no one had a wherewithal how to use them, the kind of pressure that is required in a particular patient, the capacity to really ferry them over to a hospital and have them engaged in a hospital. So I think there we found the absence of a very big supportive infrastructure, which was the industry academia talent pool disconnect. I would say that the relevant education and skill building that over the years the pharmaceutical sector has looked into, because pharmaceutical sectors, as from a medical devices point of view, we call them our big brothers. But technically, when
Right.
the medtech industry, the medical device industry, and it sprung up in two regions altogether. One was technology and innovation, and one was your IT valuation. So all your gadget devices were springing up within the market, and you need to look at your pulse setups right on your watches, which were given to you by these apples of the worlds and all that. But largely, the talent pool was missing. And today, I would say the government, through the NIPERS, the National Institute of Pharmaceuticals and Education
Yeah.
Research, and the NIMERS, which they're coming up with, and also the ISBs and couple of other private universities in the IITs, they have now dedicated bridge courses for medical devices, where people go beyond the understanding that a medical device is not healthcare, pharmaceuticals. It's engineered healthcare. What a medical device requires is someone who knows metallurgy, who knows how to dovetail that metallurgy into healthcare aspects, who knows, for instance, we talked about stents a couple of minutes
Right.
back, who knows that the kind of active pharmaceutical ingredient which is going to be smeared on the stent, a metal device, the kind of ratio and proportionality required, and the kind of maneuvering that is required. So I think today I'm in fact, like, I'm on the board of NIPER Hyderabad and NIPER Ahmedabad to come up with a new pedagogy curriculum. And this April, fortunately, the new curriculum will be coming up. So we will have trained, I think, talent pool which could reutilize this. So I think to an extent we've started working on it, but India will take some time to actually have a talent pool for it.
I totally agree because somewhere down the line we need to start from the basics because
Absolutely.
we have facilities in terms of pharmaceutical perspective, but there is no subject or syllabus which covers the medical device part of it.
Mm.
So I'm very apt because in terms of policy making, this is something the COVID has taught us the
Yeah.
importance of it.
So
So
the
that's
entire
it.
ecosystem got oiled. I mean, just to add on to what you said, the entire ecosystem got oiled. You look at the Department of Pharmaceuticals; they came out with a PLI
Correct.
scheme for medical devices. You look
Correct.
at the strengthening of the pharmaceutical policy that has come up. The now new National Medical Devices Bill is coming up. So we've got enough, which is oiling the ecosystem altogether.
Absolutely, absolutely. Mr. Umesh, this was uh, coming from Dr. Rajiv Chhibber in terms of the policy perspective, the background perspective, where we lack something. But when it comes to from the industry standpoint, because being an Olympus, how your point of view, give us a suggestion in terms of the knowledge gap, expertise level at your level, and how do you see in the current ecosystem what is happening in terms of the expertise level, because if we really see the expansion of overall medical device industry, how as an industry like medical companies you would like to take that call.
See, this is a never-ending. In every monthly meetings, we have a senior managers meeting in our company. This topic usually props up. When are we going to start our kitchen in India? So once we say the, as Dr. Rajiv rightly spotted, that the knowledge gap and the talent gap of putting our technology to be starting a manufacturing in India. For example, if you take our product like endoscopes, it's a very complex product. It's a handmade product. It's not machined. But if we have to start a factory in India, the currently there is no resource available in terms of people whom we can hire to manufacture our product. So that is one talent gap. Second is the cost of financing is quite high in India as compared to other countries like Ireland or China. They can able to give a better policy framework which will lower the cost of financing. And third is the regulations. As of now, India is still believing upon FDAs and Cs, but the current CDSCO, can you imagine medical devices are still called as drug only? I don't know for what reason. So personally, I'm a little away from that topic.
Yeah.
Okay, how can you call a device as a drug? But that's how our framework is as of now. So
Yeah.
from a frame regulatory point of view, from financing point of view, from talent point of view, we still have a long way to go ahead. But a good thing is the COVID has really taught us that our responsiveness is pretty fast. And the ongoing semiconductor issue in the industry, which is now, I think government had established a quick plan of actions to start the chip manufacturing in India. I think that responsiveness will still take us to resolve few problems, but still India is now viewed as more of a export hub for low value chain products. So that has to emerge as from Make in India, we have to move to like Innovate in India,
Innovative.
something. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
So that's where we feel that and still there is a road to be traveled. And it is government's responsibility to create a conducive ecosystems to make this happen.
Right. Recently, I think Mr. Our Prime Minister also mentioned very specifically about the innovations in all the sectors, and in that sector, he has recently launched some of the department in the IT related innovations in Hyderabad. So, what is very important when you start moving towards a ladder where you want to indigenize everything, innovation is something. If it is not, if it's missing, then the the sustainability part of any kind of industry is very tough. So yes, it's very true. This has to be on the round to make it more perfect and to have better competitive market comparison to any part of the world.
Yeah.
So my next question is somewhere a little bit different from the current discussion. What is very important apart from the current happenings, also to understand the accessibility of medical device. So how important is the rural market for the medical device industry, considering that access to healthcare, and how can industry help in improving healthcare and wellness in the rural part of India? So, Dr. Rajiv, what is your
No, I think it's a very, very pertinent question. And in fact, ICMR just a couple of weeks back came out with a scathing report on India's healthcare trajectory, especially in the NCDs area, the non communicable diseases area. And to everyone's surprise, we used to think that people in the rural areas are working a lot. They're like going and farming, they're tilling themselves all around, or people in the, the tribal areas are pretty much, healthy lot of people who've got the best air and best forestation just next to them. But it's proved to be something on the hindsight, because that report scathingly says that even tribal population, rural and peri-urban population, is the one that has been deeply impacted by non-communicable diseases. So I think
correct?
the entire spiel of three things which the Prime Minister mentioned in 2015 was affordability, accessibility, and availability. That through Make in India did take forward, but it only took forward in terms of accessibility. Now,
Yeah,
availability, which was the last mile connectivity, and affordability, which is thought to be something like cheap Indian device, or how we call ourselves generic medical devices, like Dr. Umesh just mentioned that
yeah,
India was largely seen from a cheap manufacturing angle altogether, was something which still needed to be proved. And today, if you look at it post COVID, we've proved the fact that quality medical devices or quality healthcare reachability to the last mile person, be it in a tribal area or a rural area, is something that we can really achieve. Now, just look at the ambitious project of the government
I think
catch the PPP model, which the government looked at, where hospitals or chain hospitals or larger district hospitals, private ones, can actually acquire an infrastructure setup done by the government and take it forward at a affordable and amiable cost. Which, yeah, the screens just went
Dr.
blank for
Rajiv,
a
I
second.
think
Sorry.
your
Yeah.
internet is
So
getting
I think
disconnected.
this real local production
Dr. Rajiv, your internet is hanging up. Hello. I think he's finding some difficulty in
I think,
connection.
yeah, some difficulty.
Yeah.
I can take on from what
Yes,
Dr.
Miss
Rajiv
Umesh.
has
Yes,
already
yes, please.
left. I will take your question into two parts. First, the challenge in giving an affordable treatment to the rural market. Now, if I'm a manufacturer and if I want to manufacture a product in India and to make it as affordable, health treatment to everyone, first my the tax structure is a little no bipolar. As you can see, the tax of a raw material is completely different, and there is a tax of a finished goods is completely different. So previously, as I said, the cost of manufacturing in India right now it's very high because the raw material cost is very high. Now, coming back to the thing that how medical device industry is coping or working in association with the hospitals to give affordable treatment is that I think many device companies have started this revenue sharing model. They have also now started with like a SaaS type of a model, like software as services or subscription services. So in that model already many technology companies have started doing those things. One is because it is a very differentiated product, and when a hospital acquires that, they will also have a uh, little aversion that whether it is ready for a future integration of any other future technologies or not. So this aversion is still there, but I could able to see that in many companies now they are started this revenue sharing and SaaS type of model, which will definitely is aimed at the uh, making an affordable treatment for all.
Absolutely. And one more thing, what happens in rural market kind of places, the conception and the belief of such kind of things, because for them, anything which is getting inside, which is not being believed from their faith point of view, it's very hard to give them a right, conviction that yes, this will really help in changing their overall uh, patient better outcomes and this and all. So I think somewhere down the line, education of how this medical devices industry is very important for you in terms of, we have seen a lot of lack points also. Let's say a normal tube where we generally collect the blood, if it is not properly sterilized and
Yeah.
all that stuff, so things are not properly educated at so much lower level. That's part, that is something is also lacking around. So education is something which, from the government perspective and the seriousness of it, from the expert who is collecting the blood and the person who is checking it, everybody has to understand this sensitivity point, because then only then the seriousness to the patient also goes, that why these small things will change the overall idea of better healthcare.
Hmm.
Right. Now, another question which I think Dr. Rajiv is back. I think there was some signal issue. So, Dr. Rajiv, we would like to understand, there is a shift from institutional to home market, and also a lot of conversations happening on reactive to proactive and predictive care. Your plans to address this area of the business. Are companies ready to directly engage with patients? How is it your view onto it?
Yeah, I mean, this is a very newer thought that Indian market is actually now catching on to, and it's something which I think, in terms of home care quality is getting more and more closer to cities and larger cities. It's you can't see them down to tier 2 or tier 3 or even the rural areas. But yes, once what we've seen is a replica happening, and the affordability, coming back to your last question, the affordability and accessibility aspects being really matured, I think this market will be another huge market. So home care and the similar kind of newer technologies that is really there with hospitals, where they have cameras at your place, and then they can monitor a real time situation, and
Right.
doctor giving a real time advice on healthcare to an elderly, to pregnant women, to even other critical care cancers, etc., that are not technically viable to be in a hospital setup, and can still be at a home setup where quality can be enhanced, is gaining up. But yes, the kind of atmosphere that requires for that particular change is where people also get aligned to the fact that yes, these devices are going to be set up in my residence, these devices are going to cost, because ultimately, even if you have a bed which is equipped with the entire analytical data fragment which is required, from a monitor to other gadgets which are required to be pinned onto a patient, it needs to sink in the fact. And this is at the moment a slightly higher valuation. It could cost something between 70,000 rupees to a lakh rupees a day in certain cases, to almost like as minimal as maybe 5 to 7,000 rupees a day when you look at general ortho care that is required at home. So these are getting bolder by within the market, and this is assisted largely with the IT enabled healthcare perspective
Yeah.
that we're looking at. So that is going to be more and more oriented towards affordability. I give you a small example. We've come up with this HoloLenses. Now these are gadgets that a doctor wears and can actually, sitting at maybe Hiranandani, Mumbai, can monitor a patient right here at Pitampura in Delhi. So
Absolutely.
what technically happens is the required
I think he's facing a
I think,
lot of
yeah,
challenges.
yeah,
Uh,
yeah,
Mr.
yeah.
Umesh, I would like to add further points into it.
No, just one more A, that is accountability. I mean, accessibility and affordability. You spoke. I would like to add one more A into that, which is accountability.
Right.
Because the data what we take, I mean, who is going to be accountable for the data? So that's where a question where I think the regulator has to take a call on who is better. I mean, in whose hands the data sits better and it is more useful. That is
Mhm.
where we are now looking at the things. Uh,
Yeah, I think accountability is something overall at any point of time is very important. Why? Because ultimately, convincing a customer is something is very tough.
yeah.
Be it a patient, be it a decision maker, or be it a, like stakeholders. Because somewhere down the line, if the most important part is medical industry is the quality perspective and how it is related to the significance. So until ultimately, if it is not very much convinced to a customer, the purchasing power is something which makes overall directional to a different different viewpoint. So my
Yeah.
next question is related to that also. So what
Mhm.
challenges do a medical device company face while engaging with the customers, and how do you overcome these challenges?
Okay. In what facets? What type of
Uh,
challenges?
Basically, engaging with customers means like how, let's say, if your customer in hospital, so how will you make convince them about that certain innovations what I'm trying to propose, or some kinds of introductions to make sure that this is going to be very important in terms of better patient outcome, and how it is related to current guidelines, and how it is related to
yeah, yeah,
novel
very
current devices. So differentiating point, so point of differentiation, so convincing a customer. So for me, customer is hospital also. For me, the customer is like directly going to the patient also. So what are the key challenges and what are the key interventions is required to make sure that we can minimize these gaps?
So I would start with as a device manufacturer to the consumer. In my case, it is hospitals and the doctors and the physicians. Maybe Dr. Rajiv can spoke about industry to the directly to the patients. In terms of when we introduce a technology to the hospitals, they have many future questions in the mind. One is the obsolescence, technology obsolescence. Then already the hospitals are having high fixed cost. So in that environment, adding a new technology into it. Next thing is the adoption of this technology by the current technicians, nurses, and the doctors. Will they be able to use it to the fullest advantage? And threat of substitutes of the technology, what I'm going to invest in this, whether that will be sustainable for future. And then the technology which I am buying now, will it be of helpful in doing any forward integration, or will it become like another white elephant sitting in my things when new technology comes? Because the situations are quite volatile, including the guidelines for a disease pattern. It's quite volatile now. So these are the current challenges where the industry is facing in bringing a new technology to a hospital, which is why I thought that now the companies are now taking up a course correction in terms of making a revenue sharing model and SaaS type of a thing. And then they are giving an assurance that, okay, in case of any future thing, is that we will do a sort of a buyback and then give a new machine, take the old machine, sort of things. So these are all the small steps which companies are doing on its own without any proper regulatory framework or something. Whereas if you take China, it is difficult to even there are very strict exit barriers in China. You cannot simply discontinue a product tomorrow. You have to give an advance notice for 5 years. If you want to if you want to discontinue a product line in 2000, let's say 2027, you have to inform the government now. So that is the type of framework they have, which we lack. So hospitals will be more easier to adapt to a technology, because they know that for next 8 years this is not going to happen, and it's going to be more relevant for me. Thank
But
you.
should it be a challenging phase for the medical device industry in China? Because if there is such kind of restrictions,
Yeah.
the any kind of small changes which is important for the current facilities will be really tough to get acquainted by the customers.
Yeah, exactly. But it just fades off in the high demand, high domestic demand. It just phases off all those things. So China is almost like to North America. So yeah,
Yeah, correct. Absolutely, absolutely. So, Dr. Rajiv, on the patient's perspective, so what
Yeah.
Mr. Umesh was trying to emphasize a point on the customers like hospitals who are the decision makers in buying such important equipments which are related to the not just the patient's perspective on the overall quality part of their infrastructures. But what
No,
is
I
very
guess you
important
said
to
it very
understand?
right. He very rightly gave the example from a manufacturer point of view.
Yeah,
In fact, like I'm also a manufacturer in terms of my company. I mean, we manufacture high-end stents or TAVI, which is transaortic valves, heart valves, etc. I would like to frame it in three areas which we would like to talk about. One is the area of acceptability to a hospital, which Umesh ji just talked about. Why would a hospital accept something which is already running and then trying to experiment on it, and when they also have to put in some kind of a labor where your entire healthcare fraternity needs to be trained and then moving towards adapting it, and then obviously the costing parts come to it. So that's from a manufacturer to a hospital perspective. Let me go slightly beyond to the government as well as the patient. Ultimately, the guy who's going to get the particular implant. Now, in terms of government, when you see these public procurement orders, which are the tenders, etc., which are within the government's purview to be coming out with, they will come out with the typical, basic entry of a particular device. Here is where the challenge is. You've already got those devices and you've been in the market good enough to come with a better generation of that particular device, which means your innovation, your patient outreach, and your patient safety is much more better than that particular device which is actually in the tender. So the first challenge comes is to give the government that understanding to accept innovation, the entire R&D which has gone into it, and why that particular device got the iteration. So, for instance,
Right.
for a simple thing like a stent, moving from a bare metal stent to a DES, a drug-eluting stent, was something which was a challenge to the government initially, but then they accepted it because they found out, and we had to actually teach them the fact that, or come with facts that it's
Yeah.
economically viable because your public procurement system or your public health system is going to ultimately pay for something again and again if they come for angioplasties for the second or third time. So whether you spend 70,000 rupees under Ayushman Bharat for the first angioplasty, if you do it through a bare metal stent, and then come thrice, or you do it once with a slightly better product with under Ayushman Bharat at a slight premium, that will be more viable because then the patient will not come back to you for the next 10 odd years or 15 odd years. So the economic viability here needs to be given to the government. Now coming to the, again, let me keep the stents there as the fulcrum. Now coming to the patient altogether. When a doctor would explain to a patient the acceptability of a particular stent, he will actually talk about the kind of stent that is better in terms of maneuvering within the heart lesion, the arteries itself, and the stent that would have the stealth to actually be there for a longer time and be able to release the medicine which is on the stent for a longer duration, so that dependency on overhead medicines becomes lower. That
Correct.
is where the acceptability or the patient centric approach of safety comes into play. So there are these three dimensional phases which every company would face, every manufacturer would face, the government would face, and ultimately percolate down to the patient, him or herself.
Absolutely phenomenal way of explaining the every single perspective about
Yeah.
the patient's point of view, the government point of view, and the industry point of view. But in the case of government body, who are basically trying to set up the a protocol or a guideline in the medical devicing industry, how government is very much equipped with that? So do they have a dedicated authority who generally identify all such things, or still there are a lot of changes or improvement is required because the way the industry has changed, or maybe Indian medical device industry is trying to pitch their foot very stronger, because ultimately still there are a lot of places where innovation is something is missing. But yes, what we are trying to inculcate the learnings from the innovator companies, how government bodies are taking it, because in the pharma industry, government is very much apt and proactive in terms of making sure the Indian pharma industry should be highly promoted because of
Yeah.
price affordability point of view. So, what is the current scenario for the medical device industry?
I think it's almost a similar approach with what the medical device industry, the government has taken. There is a very well tiered system of understanding a particular device. So that's an expert zone, which, for instance, I talked about the national list of essential medicines under medical devices. So there are specialty doctors, largely in the government setups itself, could be AIMS, PGI Chandigarh, JIPMAR, etc. These bigger institutes in the government where they have specialists or doctors who are on a regular basis seeing patients and trying to know the efficacy, and also are in touch with the companies altogether, because ultimately if the companies do not reach out to the doctors and do not show them the newer technologies, they're not be able to understand it. Now with those technologies in mind and the kind of disease burden, so today we have a very good mechanism of understanding the disease burden within the country itself. We've got enough tools, not only in the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, but also at the ICMR and BIRAC levels, where they are monitoring and looking at a disease demographic profile. Based on that, the kind of newer devices that are required, the pricing parity of the newer devices which is available within the market itself, the kind of clinical trials or the actual trials which have been taken place and showing efficacy against maybe MNC products, all of this is considered, and then it goes. So this particular well set of body then gives recommendation on a particular product. This particular product then goes to the NPPA, which is the National Pharmaceutical Pricing Authority. This NPPA then looks at what could be the best price, looking at the kind of availability within the market perspective itself. So this is largely the mean median mode of the available device of that particular category in the market, right from a lower costing to the highest costing, and then trying to come up with a abridged size of cost that could be effectively charged on an MRP basis, and finally becoming into a parliamentary act through the rule itself. So there is a fixed mechanism which involves scientists, which involves doctors, which involves the entire health economic atmosphere, which needs to be looked at, the pricing validated, and finally the policy done.
Yeah, I think fantastically explained. Specifically, I've seen that government has taken some very aggressive steps in terms of health economics,
Yeah.
and they have a dedicated body which talks about all industry perspective.
Yeah.
Because somewhere down the line, introduction on the current ecosystem, identifying the class of patients, and ultimately everything boils down to the patient. How it going to affect the overall system is very important. Very
Yes.
aptly said, Dr. Rajiv. And my another question to Mr. Umesh, which is somewhere down the line, very much related to a medical company and their professionals. How, what kind of training programs are undertaken to make sure the medical profession use their instruments? Because this is like, uh, I don't know how this equipment is as a
Mm.
doctor, but I know the outcome part of it, what kind of report is generated. So the execution part to make it the more, to make them more comfort. So what are the key interventions medical device industry takes care of it?
Yeah. See, right now it is now industry means is company driven only, because the company knows the technology much better than the user. So before introducing a technology, the company has to, right now there is a current framework that the industry has to take the technology for a pre-evaluation or a pre-market launch evaluation, and then post-market surveillance that it takes once it's put it on use, how it is used, and what is the outcomes are common, is the outcomes are same at all centers, or there is a spike, if someone couldn't able to use it, what is the reason? So all these things right now it is company driven with it. Right now there is no regulatory framework on a common platform uh, to bridge this knowledge gap. And I also would like to add on to your previous thing is that yeah, in pharma, government is very proactive. They are anyway. I think even there is a talk is going on to start a separate ministry for pharmaceuticals, but I think because of the budget
Yes,
issues,
yes,
it got
yes,
little
yes.
delayed. See, medical device has to be treated little differently. For example, the PLI scheme, which you just said about, which is happening in other industries, you can't apply the same philosophy here, because manufacturing a stent is different from manufacturing a robotic machine. You can't have you should have a separate metrics to gauge that how the company is competent to build or to manufacture a robotic system vis-a-vis a simple blood bag. So that expertise is not still lying with the. I'm not complaining about the government, but in fact, the DPI is very very responsive. Initially, when they started this public procurement policy, that 50% has to be in like a Indian made and all. When you know the fact that 75% is imported, how can one can quote a 50% Indian make Indian component into that? It's impossible. So there is a little understanding of the current dynamics at the groundwork, but government is responding back. When we represent, they do take an amendment. I think this this up and down communications will take a couple of more months to come to a proper consolidation. At that time, probably the knowledge gap will also be addressed. Because right now we are saying that the industry, we are going to nursing colleges and we are talking about our uh, current technologies. And whenever there is society meeting happens, for example, All India Orthopedic Association, All India Laparoscopic Associations, during those conferences we call all the nurses, technicians and the doctors, and there is an industry session where in which uh, no we put the new technologies to them for them to learn. We treat them how to maintain equipment, all those things. These interactions happen over there. Right now it is happening in these discrete manners only. There is no structured as of now.
Very excellently said. And I really like that word. The government is responding.
Yeah.
For me, what is the responsive time? That's very important because the faster we are, better we are going to a very good situation, be it in innovation, be it in accessibility, very important pertaining point. So
Yeah.
last question of my today's session. After that, we will go for the question and answer session. What are, according to you, three things that can transform healthcare in India? Three things. Mr. Umesh, you can start, then we can take Dr. Rajiv's point of view.
Yeah, three things which can transform healthcare is that definitely we have to focus on prevention, because lot was spoken about screening, diagnosis, treatment, care pathways, and all those things. But if we can do something on prevention, I think that would be much better. We Because you see, anybody opens a hospital, okay, the first line you can see when the CEO addresses the press: affordable treatment we want to give. Right. And now everybody is talking about affordable healthcare. So when that is the overarching philosophy of all of us, then all ecosystem has to move towards in that fashion, and government has to create that ecosystem to all of us to march, not in silos, but in a very coordinated manner. We should move towards it. So one is prevention. Second is accessibility. As I think one of the question in the chat also, I'm seeing that we have a lot of diagnostic centers, but still there are many populations is still not possible. I think 29th November, President of India had started one mega screening camp in Haryana, wherein which below poverty line around 1 crore population has to be screened. It's a very good initiative. So their industry has to see that. I recently met a person from Australia. They have built up a beautiful telemedicine thing, wherein which real-time data is transferable to a remote locations. They have even tried this in Antarctica also, where there is no mobile connectivity. So those type of accessibility is definitely addressable by technology adoption. So prevention, accessibility, and last is, of course, I will also put that word, affordable cost. Yeah.
I totally agree with you. Prevention is something, as an industry partners, be it from the pharmaceutical side also, has always been our key importance. Because what happens after any kind of pandemic or endemic, we start working on it rather than taking a preventions of it. So that is the biggest learning what even COVID has taught us. But nevertheless, there are still a lot of diseases which are can be taken care of well with very much preventive interventions. But sometimes it's a human tendency.
Yeah.
जब होएगा तब देखेंगे. So it's like that. So let's see. That's the overall call what we have to take on that part. So Dr. Rajiv, what are the three things you would like to transform healthcare in India?
So I think Umesh said the very best three out of what India is looking at the moment. But yeah, from an industry perspective, if I could say, for the industry to grow, the medical device industry to grow, it will only be able to grow in tandem when we have clear priority setting processes and evidence based decision making. So that will help. I mean, when we talk about preventive, we need to have a clear priority setting, clear decision making, because that will help you to understand what are your current lacunas, what are the areas where you need to spruce up very well in terms of disease demographic profiling, and then based on that is when you will be able to look at what is the strengths within the industry. So that's the first thing. The second thing where we can actually take the medtech or the medical devices further is to develop a larger market for medical devices within India. Today, when we talk about what I talked about or what Umesh ji talked about on being more import, dependent, if the same attitude what China has, what a lot of US has, or a lot of European countries have, is to actually create a medical device ecosystem, invest in all healthcare areas, and build critical volume so that domestic companies can tap into this. Now what will happen is, because of this there will be more R&D which will be flowed into it. Because of this there will be more innovation of medical devices that will be coming to the fora for people, and we will be largely reducing our imports on these medical devices. Today, just to give you an example, um, if GE or Philips, sorry to mention companies like that, but yes, I mean they're the bigger ones. If they send to India refurbished scanning products, do we really get this refurbished products at a hospital at a discounted cost, or will a hospital like Apollo say, नहीं मेरे पास 17 crores का CT scan नहीं है, मेरे पास refurbished CT scan है for 2 crores? Will the patient get that discount? No, they will not get that discount. So I think we need to develop that larger market so that within the country we can have quality and optimum medical devices which are produced. The third most important thing, which again plows back to the fact, is what we need to really change is that there needs to be a national and a centralized reimbursement agency. A lot of us end up paying, to the public health system altogether, all our products, whether it is in the states or whether it is at the center. Problem comes is when the reimbursements at the national level, state level, go to the hospitals by a delay of almost like 6 to 8 months, and further to another delay of around 6 to 8 months to the company. That really freezes the liquidity aspect of a company to create an affordable product within the country itself. So I think the Ayushman Bharat, if that could be pegged as the national reimbursement or centralized reimbursement agencies, we could involve newer devices. We could look at something which is being done in countries like France, Japan, US, where populations get the best device, getting the best in the best healthcare possible setups itself. So these are my 2 points on this.
Really fantastic. Mr. Umesh and Dr. Rajiv has given absolutely a dictionary in just a small nutshell. What is it all about medical device industry? What is very important for Indian perspective, and to make sure medical device industry is growing with very important three major facts, that is prevention, accessibility, and affordability. Fantastically taken the points, and I believe our attendees have taken very important inputs from all this discussion. Now we will go for the question and answer session, and we have very interesting questions coming to us. The question has been asked by Rahul Hyderabad. Do you feel the medical practitioners are more pro towards the acceptance of new medical devices for the better treatment outcomes? As based on some medical practitioners feel acceptance of new medical devices is difficult, as they knew they need to prove the ROI, which make it difficult for them to recommend new tech for healthcare. Uh,
I, I think I answered part of it in my
yes,
earlier
yes, yes,
conversation itself when we talked about how the acceptance is really going
right,
to take place. I think all hospitals, and he's coming from Hyderabad, so I think getting a question like him, Hyderabad has the most innovative
yes,
digital healthcare sphere itself, where
right,
hospitals have adopted to robotic technologies, where hospitals have adopted to the newer generation of products that are now available. So there is an acceptance, there is an ROI which everyone looks into it. Obviously, there's a cost attached to it. People now are willing to pay that cost. The real challenge is when this cost comes to the public health system itself. So when in Hyderabad you talk about it, you talk about largely the private health facilities that are accepting all of this. The challenge will come when your Arogya Shri scheme in Telangana will accept all of this. So I would peg it that way when I talk
yeah,
about
that's the larger than life kind of
absolutely.
opportunity. Yes, absolutely. What is the difference between a digital therapeutic product and a medical device, Mr. Umesh? What is your point?
Digital therapeutic product and a medical device. I think that is a little tough for to comprehend, but I'll just try my thing. Digital therapeutic product, I think who has Harish has asked this question. Okay.
Harish,
See this,
yes.
yeah. See, medical device is something which is used which is used in a care pathway, in a treatment pathway. A medical device is one of the product. Digital therapeutic product is a one which helps. I mean, which is it's a wearable device, and you tend to get the readings quite often, like an ambulatory reading. If you want to take in a patient, then that no takes up the readings and then transfer that to a doctor or a hospital. So
So
that's
just
what
want
I
to
can.
add, yeah, just want to add, Mr. Umesh, in the digital therapeutic section. So consider therapeutics means the prescription. It's a digital prescription which helps you to, define your treatment pattern, your improvement pattern. So if you're wearing a
Absolutely.
device which is like an Apple Watch, you can see what is your blood pressure count, what is your heart rate count. So this is a tracking mechanism, and what are the intervention what doctor has taken while prescribing your medicine, and how you're tracking through a digital perspective is something called digital therapeutics in a nutshell. But it's a different word altogether, which is still in a very nascent stage, which will take more time to get
Yeah.
absolutely mature. Yeah, Dr. Rajiv, you're saying something.
Yeah, no, I was just adding to. I mean, you said it very well, but I'll term this as emerging technologies. Ultimately, the entire aspect of digitalization of healthcare means that how quality healthcare can be transferred to you in no time or a better, data rate in that sense. So whether it is, artificial intelligence, which is aligned to it, when I talked about disease demographic profiling, all your gadgets or all your robotic treatments can immediately fill the cloud space with the kind of diseases that are there in a particular area, and you move towards a policy towards it, and that is where therapeutic products will then be designed in terms of ease of maneuverability within a body sphere. Your robotics, which Umesh ji talked about slightly earlier, is nothing, just an extended hand to a doctor who does not need to really go down to a particular organ and snip it off in that sense, but do it more efficiently through a well-oiled system.
Thank you so much, Dr. Rajiv. Another question from Anand. What are the latest trends in medical device industry? I think it's very broad question uh, pertaining to any kind of disease part of it. But can you just want to give some kind of general
Yeah.
observations from your point of view? Yeah, Mr. Umesh.
Yeah, sure. Uh, I think the future trends of medical devices is more towards digitalization only, where it is more towards machine learning and artificial intelligence. So these are all the future technologies of medical device. That is where it is moving towards, because any device which is used for screening or for treatment, the trend is that now it has to be documented, then only it will be useful for future interventions. So the documentations, when it comes, obviously digital interface is one of the things which cannot be set aside. So that is a future trend that Anand, I think you asked this question. So future trend is always towards, for medical devices specifically, it towards machine learning and artificial intelligence. In fact, I saw one of the startup company called Virgo. You give a video, uh, based on the video they will give you a diagnosis, a finding, an outcome. It's an advice to the doctor. Okay, this could be like this. I mean, they are working on such a complex algorithm where in which if you put on a video, then it will give you what could be the disease pattern of these things. So I think the trend is more going in that direction, Anand. Yeah,
I
thanks.
think very aptly said. So one question, I think, from the medical device industry perspective, from and Poonam is basically currently in marketing in medical device company, and she would like to understand how to make a successful career in the industry. Dr. Rajiv.
There are no shortcuts. I would say there are no shortcuts as such. I'm into the medical device industry. Umesh ji is into the medical device industry itself. I think it's all about knowing your doctors well, knowing the newer technologies and innovations that can provide the best healthcare well, and larger is to know how policies can really be able to steer your particular growth itself. When you say your growth, let's assume that you're in the same company and that company will give you growth. So uh, I mean, these are my three pieces of advices to Poonam.
Yeah.
Very nobly said.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mr. Umesh.
Yeah, sorry, I'll just add a couple of seconds. Poonam, see, for everyone, you need power skills, you need technical skills, and you need certain academic qualifications. Uh, uh, for example, if you are in marketing already, if you can able to learn, because as I rightly said, regulation is one of the emerging field in India, and government is also need good talents to fill up this gap. So regulatory point of view, if we can able to get into that type of knowledge, that will be of very helpful to you since you are in marketing. And
Yeah,
definitely, like what Dr. Rajiv said, the relationship with the doctors and adapting, I mean, learning about newer technologies, this will also definitely help us. But since you are in marketing, I think regulation knowledge will be of great help to you.
thank you so much, Mr. Umesh. Also, we got two more questions, but we have already asked our timelines, and more or less, the question asked by Moses and Sejal have been captured in our overall discussion. So let's have a conclusion of it. So, what is your final kind of take on overall discussion, Mr. Umesh, and how do you see that? What will be the way forward? And in the medical devices industry, what is your noble advice into it?
Yeah. See, I think we are in very good times now. 2020, when Deloitte gave their first thing, that medical device is set to grow at 15-16%. But now it is already 39% is a CAGR, which is no beyond somebody's comprehension. So we are definitely in a very good times, and as I rightly said, government is responding to our problems. Um, I think this is the best time for all of us to be in India and see how we grow. And whoever in whatever spheres, whatever capacity you are, think that I mean we should act like a global worker and not as an Indian worker, because already we are talking about being on a global stage. Uh, in terms of make in India, yes, but to once we reach that stage of innovate India, I think our nation's outlook will be completely, totally different.
Thank you so
Thank
much,
you.
Mr. Umesh, for giving your noble advice. Dr. Rajiv.
Yeah, I completely agree with Umesh. I'd like to just highlight that for India, the narrative is clearly spelled by our Honorable Prime Minister himself. And this year, from the Red Fort, and earlier also when he talked about Atmanirbhar Bharat, he added on to one thing this year. He said Jai Anusandhan, which is move on to do good and quality research. So the time is here for India to seize this opportunity to revive the domestic industry, so that uh, sorry, yeah, to revive the domestic industry, so that India ensures self-sufficiency, affordability, availability, and also providing the best devices globally. So from India to the world.
Thank you so much. I think there is some disturbance because some work is happening in the building. Uh, I would like to say thank you so much, Dr. Rajiv and Mr. Umesh, for giving us a very 360-degree overview of medical device industry. And as a pharmaceutical person, knowing such an important in-depth point of discussion is really important for me to see how the work medical device industries are doing it in the patient's perspective is really amazing. So thank you so much for your valuable time, and looking forward to connect with you in future. Thank you so much for watching, everyone, for such important discussion on medical devices. Yeah.
Thank you, Udit. Thank you, Umesh.